2 area code. Who are you? Where are you calling from?
Hey, Michael, this is Aaron from Texas.
Hey, Aaron. What's going on? What's on your mind?
Well, there was two potential things I wanted to talk about, depending on how comfortable you were discussing Bernie going on Rogan.
I don't want to. I mean, I'm good. I'm glad he did it. It's a good thing. Do you have anything else?
Yeah, we can talk about something else.
Okay. Cool.
So my dad actually was a Trump supporter. He voted for Trump in 2016.
Right.
And he's always identified with the Republicans. I'm sorry, go ahead.
No, I said I hear you. Yep. Go ahead. Sorry.
Oh, okay. But so throughout his first term, I've managed to convince him to support Bernie Sanders a couple times.
Great.
But it seems like he always kind of reverts back to these right-wing tendencies, and he buys into framing of like Fox News and the Republicans, and he's kind of back in their thrall or whatever. But and I guess I was just curious: is there like a futility in trying to convince certain people?
Well, I mean, it's your pops, so I'm assuming you're going to be talking with your dad, so you might as well talk to your dad. I mean,
I would ask
unless you find it to. Unless you get disheartened, why not?
Who else does he talk about politics with?
Yeah.
Well, that's a good question. I don't think he actually talks about it with anyone but me and maybe people at his work. So.
That's always the thing, because like workplaces have a bit large like right-wing email culture and things like that. That really,
especially the Majority Report.
Yeah.
So I'm like, hey, Brendan, can you step every time Sam says something, Brendan's always just like, psh, nonsense. Michael, let me hit you with this QAnon stuff later.
but that's where
Matt and Brendan and I have a secret right-wing cell.
That's where a lot of this stuff comes
Jamie
from.
posts a lot of Obama era stuff.
Jamie,
Right.
I had no idea. For someone who's constantly talking about being, no borders or whatever, Jamie's extremely concerned about where Obama was born, is all I'll say.
Yeah.
It's weird.
I mean, like email groups and email forwards are sort of the advance for the fascist takeover, really, because like Fox News couldn't be talking about bordering on birther stuff
Yeah, that's
if the groundwork
vanguard.
wasn't
That's
set
right.
before, and it is all through that, because that's really powerful. If all your coworkers are sharing this stuff, like Obama wasn't born here, or like Democrats would lose California if we had voter ID, like
Right.
that's. I mean, what more do you need? That's where you're getting your money, and now that's where you're getting your ideas from.
We don't know that that's what's going on at his
Right.
work.
We don't know that, but I would say that's where I would start to look if he keeps reverting back
I mean,
to that.
I think this is evidence of how effective and evil the Fox media empire really is. Like, I have a friend who had a similar experience with her dad in rural Rhode Island, who, is not a rich person. His material class interests align much more with Bernie Sanders, but he showed some signs of going that way, but then he watches Fox News 24/7 and it completely blots out any chances of progress that he might have had.
I don't know how receptive your dad is, but the stories that I've heard like this where there's been a little bit of an ease up, it starts with like the conversations you're having, and then it seems to, are they willing to do something like listen to the Majority Report, right? Because I think partially you just need to have like what Fox does is Fox organizes the information of your worldview. So, and all media does this, right? And so that's the question of this like pure objective thing is a fantasy. It's just a question of which ones are doing it to better effect for more people and how honest they're being while they do it. But I think part of the reason that you can't persuade somebody with like an argument here and there is that first and foremost, it's social. I agree with that, Matt. And I think secondly, you're having your whole like intellectual infrastructure organized in a certain way. And, just even like as an example, like because some of it is just like what topics you choose to cover, right? Like that you saw this a lot with like, the part of the reason like some of the, right-wing people on the internet, they could always find like examples of like some left-wing people supposedly being left-wing and, being ridiculous. And it's like, okay, sure.
Or
like you could spend that all day doing that. And then it's like, if you spend all day actually listening to, economists and labor organizers talking about wage stagnation, that will give you a different baseline for how to process information. So I would say that maybe if your dad is open, you might suggest some other, what you think he might like in terms of it. Probably actually watching the Joe Rogan interview might not be a bad idea for your dad, for what it's worth. But something that's like a broader induction into a worldview versus just like, some sort of points here and there. That's what I think is probably the most effective thing, at least from what I've heard.
Yeah, there are so few platforms anymore that are not completely polarized in terms of their viewership and that are seen as actual neutral platforms, whether that's really true or not. And I think that is one value that Joe Rogan has. Like, Bernie reached a lot of people who he wouldn't have otherwise via going on the Joe Rogan show, and that's valuable.
Of course, absolutely. Thanks for the call, man.
Yeah.
Appreciate it.
No, appreciate it.